Get ready to hate me, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to go through some sell high candidates here. First, we'll recap who we talked about last week. Last week, we talked about George Kittle. The reason being is if you look at his historical splits with and without Deebo Samuel, George Kittle is just a completely different player when Deebo Samuel misses, averaging like 22 points per game, only 11 points per game with Deebo. Deebo coming back in, I thought that if you could sell Kittle and go get like Kincaid, would have made a lot of sense. Now, DeAndre Hopkins, we were talking about as that sell-high guy as well. He was coming off the 3-touchdown game. In reality, now you probably can't sell DeAndre Hopkins. His value's come down significantly. George Pickens was the other sell-high wide receiver that we were looking at, saying, okay, well, essentially, with Pickens, yeah, it was great that he was going out there and dominating the target share in Pittsburgh with no Deontay Johnson. But looking at the historical splits, Pickens have been significantly worse in games Deontay's played. So we're saying, oh, if you can sell high, probably be a good spot. Now it's too late. He does nothing. Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, we were looking right after the trade deadline saying, oh, okay, well, if neither one of these players were traded, it's going to be a nasty situation through the rest of the season where you're still going to have to deal with them eating into each other's target share in a bad offense. Reality, probably not going to get much now. Gabe Davis was that other sell-high player that we were looking at. If you look at Gabe Davis, that was a wide receiver coming off a monstrous week, seeing 12 targets. I mean, everybody was coming in screaming that we had him too low in the rankings. We were saying, okay, well, we've seen this time and time again. You'll have some games where Gabe Davis is great, other games where Gabe Davis does absolutely nothing. Now it's probably too late to sell him, gives you a goose egg. Then we had Kareem Hunt as a running back that we are looking at with and without Jerome Ford, saying once Ford comes back in, Kareem Hunt will go back to being a running back that's in a running back by committee, and he doesn't catch the ball, and he's been very inefficient so far this season. Now, yeah, Jerome Ford came back in, and Kareem Hunt has seen that role shrunk. And then Gus Edwards was that other running back that we were talking about selling high, specifically in a full PPR format. And this is someone that you can maybe still sell. Whereas you really haven't seen the value go down as much for Gus Edwards as it has with these other players. So honestly, we'll start off this week with this video saying maybe if you wanted to go through and sell Gus Edwards, I'm not going to fault you for it at all. I mean, at the end of the day, there are two types of leagues that we should be looking at. One's going to be the non-PPR format, where obviously you're going to be fueled off of touchdowns, and they're going to make up a significant percentage of a player's output from a week-to-week perspective, and almost everybody is touchdown dependent in a non-PPR league. The other is going to be in leagues that you play in a full PPR setting, where the receiving is going to not only raise your floor, but raise your ceiling from a week-to-week perspective. So yes, Gus Edwards goes out there. He averages 10 yards per carry. He has multiple rushing touchdowns again whenever the Baltimore Ravens just beat down the Seattle Seahawks 37-3. Now going forward, what should we be looking at here? In my mind, I think we're looking at a running back with an incredibly low floor because he does not catch the football. He's had 7 targets so far this season, and we're in week 10. He's averaging fewer than a target a game. In a full PPR format, this is someone that, even if he has been a touchdown scoring monster with 6 touchdowns over the past 3 weeks, unless he keeps these touchdowns up, I don't necessarily know if we can go out there and get excited to start him. Now, going over to our next guy, it really is going to depend on the price point that you're looking at. But if we can find someone to buy high on Raheem Mostert, I would be a seller here. With Mostert, he is another running back that has been living off of crazy touchdown efficiency. He has had 109 carries so far this season and 13 total touchdowns. Absurd, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, he's had almost a touchdown on 1 out of every 10 targets. Now, if you're looking at the usage for Mostert over the past 2 weeks, he has been in a 50-50 backfield split with Salvon Ahmed and Jet Wilson Jr. taking over the RB2 role there. Raheem Mostert will get about 50%. Those other guys will get about 25% each. What I'm a little bit concerned by is what happens when Devon Achane comes back in, and then we may also see someone like Jeff Wilson just continue to get 10 to 15% of this backfield. Because in my mind, I think that Achane's most likely going to be the running back that's the RB1 rest of season here. So if you just pencil out, like, say, 60% of this backfield for Achane, let's not even go that high. Let's go like 50% for Achane. Then maybe like 10 to 15% for either Ahmed or Jet Wilson Jr. You're looking at 35, 40% of this backfield being left for Raheem Mostert. which he's been incredibly efficient. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry. Like we said, he's averaging a touchdown in every pretty much 10 touches at this point. But I realistically don't know if we can expect that type of efficiency to maintain going forward. And if we do get a hit to his volume, I think that it will knock him down from being a top 3 running back in fantasy right now, more so to that mid running back 2. Now, if you go over to flockfantasy.com and look at the community rankings currently, you're already seeing Raheem Mostert priced in there. So, I mean, I think that this is probably an appropriate ranking. And honestly, maybe he's a little bit undervalued here, going next to guys like Deontay, CJ Stroud, Garrett Wilson. But I will say if you're playing in more of a casual league where your league mate's just going to look at his total points this year and we can sell him based off that, I think that would be very interesting. Now, going over to our next guy, we'll be looking at Rhamondre Stevenson. And probably not great to use the community ranking value here with Rhamondre either. Now, when you look at those community rankings on flockfantasy.com, when I say sell high on Rhamondre Stevenson, I'm not saying you have to sell him for anybody in his range. I'm not saying, oh, okay, he's right in between Tank Dell and Terry McLaurin. Just go sell him for McLaurin. No. If we're selling high on a player, we are trying to get extra value added on. You don't have to move on from these guys, but it's more so if you can get a great price point, right? So instead of selling Rhamondre closer to like the 60th player overall, if you can sell him a little bit closer to like the 40th player overall, that's where we should be letting go. And if we are looking at him, the reason being is this past week, he was great. He gives you almost 130 total yards. He gets you the rushing touchdown as well. But underlying this production, the usage really does not change in the slightest. You have 9 carries for Rhamondre Stevenson. And with those 9 carries, this marks the second lowest of his season. You know, you go over and look at the receptions. He's had 4 receptions. So the one thing is, Rhamondre Stevenson, we've said it all along, is still a running back that you have to start every single week based off this level of receiving usage. However, if we are looking at the overall profile, he is still a running back that is in a committee with Ezekiel Elliott. He's still a running back that's in a very bad offense, and he's still a running back that's been very inefficient so far this season. I mean, despite him going out there and having a 64-yard rushing touchdown this past week, he's still only averaging 3.7 yards per carry. So, I mean, you can be a running back that's inefficient if you're seeing everything in your backfield. You can be a running back that's in a bad offense if you are a great talent, like a Breece Hall. But to be a committee running back that's inefficient in a very bad offense, it is hard to get behind you. If you're in a full PPR format, I'd be completely fine holding on to Rhamondre Stevenson. However, in a non-PPR league, I'd be looking to sell. Now, let's go over and let's look at Josh Jacobs here, ladies and gentlemen. And with Jacobs, full transparency, he and another running back I'll be talking about later on are guys that I drafted a ton of this year. Like, I took a lot of Josh Jacobs in round 3 when people were worried about the contracts. And with Jacobs, I'm very happy with what we've done so far in terms of his workload. He's gone out there and he's had 159 carries this season. And he's had 43 targets as well. Beautiful. And typically, I'm looking to chase this type of workload. Now, obviously, the issue that we've had with Jacobs is just how bad this Las Vegas Raiders offense is, or at least was, because I know a lot of people are coming around on it. Where Jacobs, whether it's the fault of his own or most importantly, probably just the situation that he is in, has actually seen 3.2 yards per carry. And this isn't to come out here and act like yards per carry is some super important statistic. It's not like we can evaluate running back talent just based off yards per carry. Obviously, you can't do that. And if you think you can, I mean, I don't want to go down there. But nonetheless, it still does illustrate the overall struggles of this offense more than anything. And that's my point, in that I just don't necessarily expect that the offense is going to be a complete 180 than it was previously. Like, if you're looking at the implied team totals that we currently have for this Raiders offense, keep in mind, they do have a bad matchup going up against the Jets this week, but you still have Vegas sportsbooks, despite the coaching change, despite the quarterback change, pricing in the Jets offense to be the 4th worst offense in the NFL this week. They are only ahead of the Giants, Browns, and Panthers. Yeah, that's bad. Obviously, the Panthers are one of the worst offenses. They actually play tonight, and while Bryce Young's been horrible, I'm actually pretty confident Bryce Young will at least have 1 passing yard for tonight. And if you agree with me, I mean, hell, you can go through and take the more than half a passing yard on Underdog Fantasy for the Thursday night game here. Promo code FLOCK, not only you're going to get that special pick'em, but an additional 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. So make sure you take advantage of that in the comment section or the description. Now, going over to someone else that projects out to be in a pretty bad offense, Amari Cooper is another wide receiver that I have a lot of, and I really hope that I am wrong here with Amari. But if you can sell Amari as a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2, coming off a week where he gets you the 139 receiving yards, he gets you the receiving touchdown as well. Probably is going to be something I'm looking to do. I mean, he had a phenomenal matchup here going up against the Arizona Cardinals, where if we are projecting this out going forward, I mean, the matchups are going to be much tougher. Keep in mind, he plays in one of the tougher divisions in the NFL, if not the toughest division in the NFL. If you're looking at what we have with this week with the Cleveland Browns supply team total, you have Las Vegas sportsbooks, primarily because it's a bad matchup against the Ravens, actually giving the Cleveland Browns the second worst projection, only ahead of the New York Giants this week. Not only do you have like the Ravens matchup here, but looking ahead, you also have, say, the New York Jets for the Fantasy Football Championship. You get the Pittsburgh Steelers next week. And if we look at the underlying target volume with Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson coming in, this is still someone that only had 5 targets this past week, right? And I do want to reiterate, if you are looking at these community rankings on flockfantasy.com, when I say to sell Amari, don't think I mean, oh, okay, Mason said Amari's a sell high. He's at 62. I have to sell. No, these are just players that if you get an opportunity to sell at a higher price than where they should be currently valued, then we're looking to do it. So instead of looking to sell Amari for someone ranked at, say, 63, 61 in the overall rankings, if you could pivot off them and get someone at 40, 39, 38 in the community rankings, I think that'd make a lot of sense. Now, someone else that's in the same range that has been absolutely phenomenal, and full transparency, I don't have a lot of them, is Nico Collins. And trust me, I wish I drafted a lot of Nico Collins because the man has been a monster so far this season. He has 631 receiving yards off of 53 targets. He has been one of the most efficient wide receivers in the entire NFL. He is playing with one of the, I don't want to say one of the best quarterbacks, but he's playing with a very, very, very good quarterback in a great situation. But if I'm looking at the underlying usage, what's surprising for me as well, especially with how Tank Dell profiled coming out of school, is Tank Dell's seeing the majority of the volume here. You also have secondary wide receivers at the same time really getting involved. So I am going to be a little bit concerned about what we have when we look at the actual target share that Nico Collins has in this offense. Because, I mean, if you go through and look at the CJ Stroud pass attempts that we have had so far this season, I mean, CJ Stroud is near the top of the NFL in passing attempts every single week. I mean, he's no Sam Howell, but he's out there and he's had 279 passing attempts so far this year. I mean, this past week, 42 passing attempts, right? He's had, say, 5 games now, or maybe more than that. I mean, I'm sorry. He's had 8 games with 30 or more passing attempts. And if we're looking at the underlying target volume for Nico Collins, over the past month, he's had 5 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets, 4 targets. So he's averaging 5 targets a game. There are just so many players in this offense getting involved. He's still been great because of the efficiency and because how good this offense has been. But if you see any fall off where the Houston Texans are no longer a top 5 to 10 passing offense in the NFL, I think Nico can get severely hit. Now, going over to someone that I drafted a ton of and that we actually got to see some people sell him for Jonathan Taylor last night in the live stream. Saquan Barkley is an easy sell if you can pivot off to the Jonathan Taylor range. Saquon Barkley is a running back that I have taken a ton of, and he is the entire New York Giants offense. You go 2 weeks ago, 36 carries and 5 targets. He had over 40 opportunities against the Jets. This past week, he has another 20 opportunities with 16 carries and 4 targets, and he's getting there just based off of pure volume and volume alone. You're looking over the past 2 weeks now at this point, Saquon Barkley having back-to-back games with over 120 yards. And typically what we're going to say is oh, okay, the player that has this type of volume is going to be able to go out there and start scoring more touchdowns, right? However, I just find that very hard to believe with how bad this New York Giants offense is. where if you're looking at the implied team total of what we have with this Giants offense this week, keep in mind, a lot of this has to do with what we have with the matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. But Vegas sportsbooks are putting the New York Giants with an implied team total of 11 points. I mean, I have a short memory here, but I cannot remember the last time that I saw an offense project to be this bad in any given week. So even if it's true that Saquan Barkley is going to see 100% of said offense, 100% of 0 is still 0. And obviously we're exaggerating, but you get the point. So if I could pivot off of Saquon, I think I would go ahead and look to do that. Now let's go over and let's look at a wide receiver that honestly got there this past week, and I think you can really root for him, and I am. Jordan Addison gets there again with 52 receiving yards. And if you look at the past, I want to say 5 weeks now, or maybe even 6 weeks, Jordan Addison has been phenomenal. Starting with the Chiefs game, 64 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown. I mean, he had a 4-game stretch with at least 1 receiving touchdown. This past week against the Atlanta Falcons, he still has 5 receptions for 52 receiving yards in a game where Joshua Dobbs does, not much in terms of passing volume. And Joshua Dobbs came in and was just put with all the odds stacked against him. So I really am rooting for this Minnesota Vikings team going forward. Y'all know I'm not a fan of any particular NFL team. I just kind of like rooting for players, and Joshua Dobbs is one of those guys that I really want to root for at this point. But if we're projecting this offense going forward, while Dobbs himself can be viable in fantasy based off his rushing upside, and at the same time, based off the fact that he is surrounded by great weapons in Jordan Addison, in Justin Jefferson, and in TJ Hawkinson, I don't know if Jordan Addison can continue to get there in this offense. Now let's go over and let's look at a running back coming off a game with 20 carries and 4 targets. Rashad White is going to be a running back that is a sell in a non-PPR format. If you're playing in a non-PPR league, Rashad White coming off the game with 2 rushing touchdowns, super excited about him. But in reality, we have to ask ourselves, are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going to score 37 points going forward? No, this is never going to happen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. If we go through and look at what the Bucs have done so far this season, 20 points, 27 points, 11 points, 26 points, 6 points, 13 points, 18 points, 37 points. This week was an extreme outlier. Now, with that being said, Rashad White still remains that running back that we are starting every single week, and you have to in that full PPR league, because of the target volume, right? Not only has he had 34 targets this season, but what's incredible is off of these 34 targets, Rashad White's had 33 receptions. That stat line does not seem true. It doesn't seem like it should be possible, but that is giving him an incredible floor in a full PPR league. And obviously when he does go out there and miraculously score a touchdown, then we can be really excited. But in a non-PPR format, if we're just relying on touchdowns and an offense that's going to be very subpar, I'm not excited about it. But I think that's all I have for y'all in this video. If you have not done so already, please go down there, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you wanted to check out that Bryce Young special pick'em more than less than half a total yard, or any of those pick'ems for this week on Underdog, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you, and really hope I get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.